Crooked River, Chapter 18, June 1812. The judge arrived a few days before the trial was set to begin. It was the first week of June when he came riding into our settlement. The weather had been warm and dry, and the corn had been in the ground for a good while. The beets and potatoes were already coming up in the garden, and we had more onions than we cared to eat. Our gossiping neighbor, Mrs. Evans, was the one who came barreling down the path to our house to tell us the judge had arrived. Hammering her big knuckles on the doorframe to get our attention, Mrs. Evans even gasped out of breath. That judge we've been waiting for is here. My husband's seen him with his own eyes. If you ranked men in order of importance, the most important man to meet would likely be the president, next to the governor, and right after that would be the traveling judges who came for the court dates. Since none of us had had a pair of ever meeting President Madison, and not likely Governor Meigs either, everyone was always anxious to get a glimpse of the judges when they passed through our settlement like minor kings. They always had fine-cut frock coats from the city, handsome riding horses, and a collection of mysterious leather bags and round portmanteaus tied to their saddles. "It's Judge James Randolph Noble," Mrs. Evans continued. "That's what my husband said. Judge James Randolph Noble. I don't know why, but hearing his fancy name gave me some hope. I pictured the judge in his flowing black robes looking like Moses giving out the 10 Commandments. A judge named James Randolph Noble would see to it that justice was done for Peter Kelly and Indian John. Surely he would." Mrs. Evans, who was an everlasting talker, said the courtroom for the judge was being set up under the big shady tree next to Mr. Perry's store. Anybody who can fill up a foot of space and put the fear of God in that wretched savage is invited to come and hear it, they says, even women and children and babes in arms. Mrs. Evans rattled on. Mrs. Evans peered at us. "I reckon both of you is going to be there with your pa and brothers, ain't you?" When me and Laura didn't answer, Mrs. Evans leaned forward, eyeing us more closely. "Now you ain't just going to stay here in your old house, are you? Don't you want to see that Indian get his comeuppance for what he done? Setting there by yourselves won't be half as good as watching all that." She shook her finger at Laura. "You just tell that pa of yours to let you come and watch. I don't see why Major Carver would find fault with letting his girls come to a savage's trial. You tell him Mrs. Evans will keep an eye on you. Just tell him that." She turned to leave. "And I'm going to borrow one of your milk buckets while I'm here, too, if you don't mind." And without waiting to hear a word from us, she headed out the door and in the direction of our barn and was gone. After Mrs. Evans left, Laura heaved a deep sigh. "I don't care to go to that trial at all," she said. "Let everybody leave us to ourselves. You and me will take a pinch or two of sugarloaf and make some fancy little cakes in the reflector oven, like the ones Ma used to have for company. And we'll put on our good bonnets and find a place to sit near the cabin, and we'll drink green tea and eat our fancy little cakes. Let Pa and the men do what they will." To tell the honest truth, I didn't want to see the trial either. I knew what Peter Kelly had told me, how he was going to win, and I knew what my pa and the settlement all believed, and I knew that the Judge James R. Noble was there to see that fair justice was served. Looking at it from all these directions, I believed that nothing good could possibly come out of the trial for anyone. But Pa wouldn't hear of us staying home. "Carver's is going to be at the trial," he said when Laura tried to reason with him at supper that night. She told him we were planning to do some baking and keep an eye on Mercy rather than going to watch the trial proceedings. "You just bring Mercy along with you and make her mind," he said in a hard voice, "and make your bread and such some other day. All of us is going to be at the trial." The Geechee-Mukumong paint my face in crooked stripes and take me from the place that floats above the ground. Outside, I lift my head and smell the corn growing in the fields, and the fish swimming in the rivers, and the wild red berries turning full and ripe in the woods. I hear the deer moving with their fawns, and the snapping turtles coming up from the rivers, and the rattlesnakes curled asleep in the sunlight. I believe the Geechee-Mukumong are blind and deaf. They do not turn their heads to look up at the sky. They do not hear the sound of their loud feet. They pull me through the woods at the end of their iron rope, talking of death in words they think I do not know. They see and hear nothing that lives.